Do mermaids ever wake up with sore necks? That's what I want to know.
I
is that
feel
just
like
a me problem.
They're in a constant. They're like floating in.
Just seems like they would never.
Space.
That would never happen.
I do have a question about like the physics of mermaid sex. That I used to have questions about one like mermaid sex question, but now I have like a completely separate mermaid sex question that I think comes from just being older and like.
We brought an expert in,
I know,
everybody.
we did.
We brought in our mermaid expert.
Everybody, please welcome for the third time, I think. I don't know.
Fourth, maybe
Fourth time. Zoraida Córdova is with us, who is also Zoey Castile. And when we decided we were going to do a mermaid episode, there was only one person who could possibly have been Jen, what did you say? You were like, mermaids? I don't know anything about mermaids.
We better get Zoraida on the phone or the shell, whatever it is.
I saw the broadcast of the shell in like a Batman sign.
Yeah.
In the New York skyline, and that's when I knew.
And you knew.
But I feel like in romance, there is only Zoraida. Like if somebody says like mermaids, like I don't know who other people call, but we call you.
Okay, and I would like to say Laura Von Holt, right? Who has the mermaid podcast.
She has the mermaid podcast.
Yes.
But Laura, interestingly, does not write about mermaids. She writes about pumpkin pounding. This is a separate thing. Everybody, happy Halloween. First.
Well, it's the week after Halloween when this is airing.
What this is? I don't even know anymore.
It is correct. This is the week after Halloween, and I think maybe the day after the election.
Oh, geez. So here, you need pumpkin pounder.
Jesus. Yeah. And mermaid anatomy.
Listen,
sure.
If it's the day after the election, we probably are all still vibrating and we don't know what's happened. So you're welcome, everybody. Here we are. We're gonna get to the bottom of all the physics of mermaid sex today with Zoraida Córdova.
Let's do it.
So
underwater in a different way. Okay.
Yeah. So Zoraida, you have written how many mermaid books? Because by my count, it's 5. Is that correct?
Okay. So there's The Vicious Deep and the 2 sequels, which were my YA debut novels in 2012.
This is where I remember having a conversation with you long ago about the physics, the pocket situation. Which
yes,
we'll get into.
The pocket, yeah. And then I wrote this novella as Zoey Castile called The Captive Mermaid's Promise.
Which I just finished yesterday, and it's really a delight. Thank you.
Thank you. And then mostly I've written mermaid short stories. So I have a mermaid short story in Reclaim the Stars, which is Relit, which is a Latinx science fiction and fantasy anthology. Which is basically a Frankenstein made a mermaid instead of a Frankenstein. Frankenstein's, he's Frankenstein. And then I have the short story in Mermaids Never Drown. Mermaids Never Drown.
Oh, right.
Which is an anthology, a YA anthology that I co-edited with Natalie C. Parker.
And Meant to Be, the Meant to Be series, right? Kiss the Girl. Which we've talked about on the podcast. It was one of
it's on the best. It was
one of my picks for the best of last year.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much.
Well, it's great. It's such a terrific book. It's so fun. It's basically a rock star romance, but also a contemporary retelling of The Little Mermaid.
Yep, Disney's The Little Mermaid.
Which is interesting because I feel.
Sarah, before you launch into because, should we welcome the people to the podcast?
Oh, I figured we would have already done that in banter, but let's do it now. No, you're right. We should. Let's do it again.
Let's just do it. I feel like we're in it.
We're in it.
We're bantering with Zoraida.
Welcome, everyone, to Fated Mates. I'm Sarah McLean. I read romance novels, and I write them.
I'm Jennifer Prokop, a romance reader and procrastinator. It's like a personal statement about my state of being right now, but it's fine.
And we are here today with Zoraida Córdova, which we've already said, but welcome, Zoraida.
Thank you.
We're excited.
I wasn't sure if I was here in my capacity as Zoey or Zoraida.
I feel like you can't separate the two. Like, you are both when we are talking about mermaids. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, See, now you've derailed me.
I'm sorry, I
It's
derailed
like
you.
a storm has come through the sea.
It'll come back. Here's how we can start. Because I want to. One of the reasons we'd mentioned we have like Zoraida's our mermaid expert, and we've had on the podcast. You've mentioned this before, but like you have really loved mermaids and mermaid lore
my whole life. Yeah, it is. Most kids I think are thinking about how do I get a boyfriend, and I'm thinking like, how does a merboy have a penis? And that was really just my deranged, perverted little mind just being like, well, I barely figured out how all of this, my own personal stuff works. Now let me figure out how does the anatomy
of the
work.
magic.
Yeah.
And that didn't come out until a little bit later when I was researching my debut novel, The Vicious Deep, which is about a teenage boy who discovers he's the grandson of the Sea King and has to champion for the sea throne. It is out of print, so if you could find it, it's probably like in a used bookstore somewhere, but it's not online or anything anymore. But this is the series that got me started with doing this kind of research and thinking about how I wanted my mer people to function, essentially. And so I came up with a lot of different versions of what kinds of mer people there are, because like all fantasy, you make it up to fit your own story.
So mermaids are really fascinating, and merfolk are very fascinating to me in the sense that they sort of come from everywhere. Like every culture seems to have some sort of like concept of things that live in the sea, like sentient beings that live in the sea.
Yes.
Possibly humans. Possibly
manatees that the conquistadors were like, oh, that looks like a person. I'm going to fuck it.
Well,
exactly. Like all conquistadors.
I'm really interested in hearing more about this because I think one of the things I'm interested in is like the power or like it feels like everything's the Little Mermaid to me, right? Like everything. And so I'm kind of like, is it just like that there's only one mermaid story and therefore like that becomes the blueprint as opposed to like a princess in a castle? We've got like a million of those stories.
No, actually, it's so a few years ago, Penguin, Penguin does a lot of those like book, like story collections about a specific topic, like the book of demonology, the book of like fairy tales. So they have a book, the Penguin Book of Mermaids, and it's by two, oh my God, what is the word? Archaeologist is not the right word. But two researchers, anthropologists, I think, like story anthropologists. But I remember reading it just because I was like, this is a beautiful cover. And they were like, you're a mermaid person. Here's this book. I ended up blurbing it. In that collection, there's mer people from Hawaii, the Philippines, the Caribbean, which comes from the African diaspora, and they're indigenous mermaids, specifically some that I forget the names of the tribes, the specific tribes, but they have a lot of like mermaid in the waterfall. Greek people have obviously Poseidon and all of the nymphs and Poseidon's son Triton.
Right.
Like Triton literally is a merman. Poseidon's son Triton.
Triton could get it.
Yeah, Triton can get it. There's ichthyosauruses, which are like a centaur but a merman.
I'm
which I actually would like to write that one day.
Get it done.
What's a kraken? Is a kraken
a kraken is just a giant octopus. Yeah, that is like that. Is it Lovecraft? I'm not really sure. Like Cthulhu.
Oh yeah.
That like
okay.
So there's just like, and
so there's like there's monsters and then like people?
Yes, and
Okay.
sometimes they're a little bit of both. In like that fairy Celtic mythology, there's in Ireland, there's the Marrow, and the Marrow is like the ugly guy merman. But they're specifically called Marrows. Then there's just water creatures, right? So they're all over the world. They're pretty global. Russian people and Slavic people have the rusalkas.
Mm-hmm.
And I will talk about a book it's actually not a romance, so I'll just mention it now. It's called Fathom Folk, which by Eliza Chan, which it's a Asian mythology,
Oh, cool.
but it's a political fantasy with mer people.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot.
And like
Okay,
this
so there's a lot,
has
okay.
to be in large part because the ocean is just monster soup, right? Like
Yes.
such weird shit comes out of there just walking on a beach, like that. You have to assume that like the mystery of the ocean, especially for like people who are seafaring, is
Yeah.
it inspires us to imagine that there is like a whole universe down there. And
Absolutely. And I think that, if stories and mythology and all the things that people used to believe in and still do are a way for us to explain the world, then how do you explain like standing by the rocks of a beach and hearing that like haunting sound that sounds like somebody singing? And so, or the things that you see jumping out of the water. And so it's really fascinating from that point of view, how we explain away all the things that have now become kind of like central to monster fucking and other
Right.
things.
mm-hmm.
Well, and I think also so much of the ocean is unknown to us, even now, right? I mean, back then, but like even now, how much, I mean, like we're sending things down to the very bottom and blowing up billionaires down there.
I was gonna say,
But,
including billionaires.
but I think
don't
like
hate it.
ultimately there's like that's the part that's like when people talk about how much of the ocean is like unknown to us or like how because it's so impossible for us to get there.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy. It was easier to get to the moon to the bottom of the ocean. That's real wild when you think about it.
That is
right?
wild.
But in our case, we're specifically interested in the fucking part of it, right? Like, why?
Why are they like this? Why am I like this?
I mean, I'm just cutting to the chase
Right,
here.
I guess I'm like
Right?
the romance of it.
Let me tell you some of the research I did. When I was trying to decide what my when I decided trying to decide what my mermaids look like, I sort of had to pick between, are they mammals that live
Mm.
underwater, like whales,
Mm.
or are they just fully fish?
Fish
Right?
with gills, yeah.
Fish with gills. And you see that in lots of different books. Libba Bray's A Great and Terrible Beauty series has like Peter Pan mermaids, but they look like they're bald with scales on their heads,
Yeah.
And then you have like the Disney or whatever those cutesy mermaid movies were, like not Splash, but like, they're beautiful.
Right.
They're like, they
Also
have
Splash.
actual hair, also Splash. They have like, beautiful hair and they just have a tail. And then we have to explain why they have a tail. So if mermaids are mammals.
See, this is the difference between us and people who write fantasy.
I know.
We
I
have
was
to
like,
explain why they have a tail. I'm like, why? They just do.
They just have a tail.
This is
What's
just
the big
for me.
deal?
I'm just neurotic, okay?
No, that totally makes sense. Like,
No,
I mean,
obviously,
I
you
love
do
it.
need to explain that.
So I'm like,
Right.
okay, if I'm going with mermaids or mammals. I do have some mermaids that are like actual fish, but it's a different mythology.
Okay, so that answers my first question, which is, all your mermaids do not live in the same mer universe.
No. Even my vampires, my witches, I have different universes for everything. So I'm just sort of being like, well, what if I did this differently and had a different kind of, you know what I mean? So like,
Yeah, so you're not
different
locked in
rules.
once you make a decision. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so if mermaids are mammals, they have to have they have mammary glands. They need some seashells or some protection for their
Interesting.
nipples. Right. So like if you're a mer person, so I was like, okay, so I need the scales to retract. So when they surface, they can brush away their scales and their scales turn to sand. And so it's just like easy. It's a little painful, but like there you have coverage for your nipples when you're swimming really fast in the water.
Mhm.
And you're just like going turbo in some. I'm imagining this is how mermaids like take like
Sure.
the LIE, right?
Yeah.
And so they would have that. The hair situation, I feel like that's the part that never makes sense because they shouldn't have human hair underwater, but it's
Right.
just too pretty.
But you have to.
Well, but
Yeah.
how
The
else-
rules.
listen, it's literal gravity defying hair.
Exactly.
This week's episode of Fated Mates is brought to you by Madison Scorer, author of Happily Never After.
So this one is the next book in Madison Scorer's Claire Hartley Accidental Mystery series, which is this adorable, cozy, romantic mystery series featuring Claire, who she just wants to have her life as like a dog mom who is dating a grumpy filmmaker and who gets to plan these epic marriage proposals. That's what
What a great
she's
job.
made her life doing. The problem is that every book she kind of seems to not be able to shake the possibility that someone in the book wants to murder her. I mean, so it's getting to be a real problem. And in this book, she is supposed to be trying to pull off a wildly elaborate Hollywood proposal. But of course, while this is all happening, she discovers there is a very small, like really minute possibility that she didn't, in fact, put every member of the murdery organization that she was dealing with in past books behind bars. At least that's what she thinks when she discovers her warehouse has been burned to the ground. The FBI is useless, and so Claire has no choice to put on her amateur sleuth trench coat once more. Although at this point, like, is she really an amateur? Anyway,
She's a professional.
Grumpy filmmaker boyfriend is exasperated, I'm sure. And this one is perfect for anybody who is looking for a cozy mystery that has a great little romance in the middle of it.
You can binge the whole series right now, and it's available in print, ebook, or with your monthly subscription to Kindle Unlimited. If your podcasting app supports it, you can click on the chapter title right now to be taken to buy the book. Thanks to Madison Scorer for sponsoring this week's episode.
But then we get to the other organs, right? So
Thankfully.
Sarah's like, I've been waiting 15 minutes for this.
I've drawn this diagram for lots of people.
I think I've
phones.
seen this diagram, but if you'd like to draw it for us, we can put it in show notes, and also it could be the image on the podcast
that you're looking at right now.
After being a little tipsy, I drew this like diagram of like, so if people with penises would have a slit down their front, which is covered by scales, kind of like a boxer brief. Right.
Oh.
And so, yeah, because whales
Haynes
also
has already got there.
Have you ever Googled a whale penis?
Well, no, but now I'm going to. So here we go.
See,
I'm
this
doing
is
it
the
right
difference
now.
between us. Sarah's like, no, I haven't. Let me get to it. And I'm
pulling
like,
up my browser.
okay.
So,
whale penis.
Whale penises.
Oh my God.
See?
They come out of. They come out
between us. I don't need to know.
Holy shit! There's a picture. You guys, don't do this unless you're ready. Is what I'm.
So this was my inspiration. Obviously, mermen have like a little bit regular size, appropriate sized for a romance novel. So just like 12 inches. Just kidding. And so they remove their penises when they need to pee or have sex.
Wait, they remove them?
They bring
it out from the
pull it out.
pocket.
Sorry,
from the pocket.
They remove it from the pocket.
I thought you meant like it was detachable.
No, detachable penis. Do you remember that song?
Oh my God, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Incredible. So it's not that scary. It my merp people, like their penises look like more human penises.
I said I wasn't going to look it up, so Sarah looked it up and then forced it onto the Zoom screen, so I have to look at it. That
non-consensual whale penis.
I love
a tale of our friendship, right there.
A tale of two penises, mammal and nut. And so, what was I saying? Okay, so that's one way. And so when they're ready to have penetrative sex, I think that mermaids with a vagina, their vaginas would have to be closer, like down and under, like further to the back.
They have tails.
Because they have tails, exactly, and they can't open up those tails, so the access needs to be
in the front.
They're in the back near their.
Wouldn't it be great if there was like a mermaid with like a tail like culottes?
Doggy. They always mount from the back.
Yeah, they always mount from the back because unless they're in human form. Because
well, that would inspire. Like then we would, that would.
They'd probably get in trouble for that though. Like like they'd be like, "You're not allowed to do it in that form."
Wrong
That's
hole.
wrong.
So
gross.
But they also can't access it, right? Like they can't access it because it like the entrance would have to be
why from
lower
the
and back. Because then I guess I could. Like technically, I could do it the other way around. I'm using my hands like as if I could.
But
show
I guess
you.
two tails kind of mean like you're. Like you'd have to be. I get it. I get it.
Do it. It's doable. It's doable.
My job apparently right now. I'm just here to giggle.
No,
everybody
but front to back.
Real...
See, because front to back feels like you could both. Okay, listen. Front to back is like you could both bend the same way, but front to front,
no. Oh, front to front, you can. Front to front.
That's what I mean.
Like,
front to back. Right. So,
yeah.
I'm glad we're really getting the bottom.
So, like,
of this.
yeah. So, like,
all right. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so, but you have to be very careful. But also,
if we're working with this whale penis thing, like, there's no concern about.
Yeah. So there would have to be two. There are two entrances, right? There's like your booty hole, and then your.
I like how there's still two.
Everything
entrances.
else. Yeah. So.
Everyone just like, I'm gonna leave this to you two weirdos.
So in I think it's whale anatomy. In order, because I was like, well, how does sperm actually enter? And this is the research I did for the Captive Merman's Promise. Because for my YA, I was just like, I just need to know where they are. Like,
they're not right. Nobody's asking
YA.
these hard-hitting questions, if you will, these penetrative questions.
Exactly. Yes. I really need to penetrate the subject thoroughly. So.
You listen, we're doing a service right now.
It's
for
the day after election
country.
Day, everyone.
You're welcome, everyone.
Whatever happens. No, just kidding. There's only one option. So, where was I? Oh, so I had to figure out how, research. How does like sperm enter the body if they're underwater? And so, their penises are just have to be that much longer to go up the channel.
Sure.
Yes.
And so they have sort of this like suction so that seawater does not
so
get
now
in.
Here is where I would like to pause and discuss the specifics of the Captive Merman's Promise.
Yeah, so the Captive Merman's Promise, should I pitch it?
Yes. It's great.
So the Captive Merman's Promise is a novella that I wrote originally for a Kickstarter, Peculiar Tastes, and I've added like a bonus ending and published it in audio this in October 2024. It's also available on ebook, and it's about a young bruja who is cursed to always lose her love. And it used to be her family's curse, but she has since absorbed it into herself so that her family can have their happy ending. So she just like wanders around the world looking for to alleviate the pain. And she winds up in this like circus Samhain night spectacle at this sort of like a brothel run by this like wizard man, sorcerer. And
one of the things I liked about this was like he's real hot and like
I was like,
right?
I'm in.
I was like, wait, is this the guy? He seems like kind of a scumbag, but I guess that's what we're doing now. And I was like, oh, it's not.
No, not
but
not
he
in my
could have
books.
been, and that's what's important.
I will have a hot villain. I just don't always. I can't redeem a hot villain.
No, my
Sometimes.
entire life with Zoraida has been texting Zoraida like, when am I going to get that horrible villain story? And her being like, you're not. Go away from me.
You know, I
Anyway.
always make them nice. That is a Star Wars story that I can tell later. But anyway, so she meets her name is Amada. She meets Ronan, who's a merman who's been captive for
Who's like in
hundreds
a fish tank, everyone. It's
Oh,
in a
really
fish
yeah.
tank,
sad.
and he has to perform for people, including like masturbating in front of people because his sperm turns into pearls when they are in contact with salt water. And
Sure.
this
And
is
anything
something,
salty, everyone.
and everything.
FYI, anything salty.
There's salt water in our saliva. Just putting that out there.
It's fucking perfect.
So-
It's so great.
I
Listen,
love everything
all
about
I
this.
want from romance is like for people to just take the swing. And
Yeah,
like,
go right.
y'all, Zoraida takes the swing in this novella. It is absolutely delightful.
Yeah,
Thank you. And so they, a captive merman, a cursed bruja who fall in love, and they fall, they. For me, I'm always sort of an insta-love kind of girly, so it happens over a couple days in around Samhain.
And it's also blazing hot, this novella. You're all going to have a great time. Because it's written by Zoey Castile.
It's written by Zoey Castile.
Who is the like blazing hot version
Yes.
of Zoraida.
Mm-hmm.
Zoraida After Dark, if you will.
Oh,
That's
that should be the name of my website. My Zoe website.
So, okay, you were talking about the pocket. So then the way that, but this is actually all discussed. What I love about your books is like all the world building is actually like sorted in the books.
Yeah.
And so at one point there's like a discussion of like how mermaids procreate. And he's like, well, there's a pocket and there's like, it's a seal so that it doesn't turn to pearl in there.
Yes, it doesn't like there's no pearls in your uterus because that would be painful.
No.
And so when there's a line in my YA novel, in the Vicious Deep, because it's a teenage boy and he's turned into a merman for the first time, and he's like, and he has a guardian with him.
He has one question.
He's
It's
like,
not about the tail.
bro, and like he can't ask his mom, the ex-mermaid. So he's like to his guardian, he's like, bro, where does it go? And his guardian is like, don't worry, there's a pocket. And so this pocket that I wrote in 2012 has just been in as many mermaid things that I can put it in.
So
That's what
that
she
is
said.
the same. The boxer brief pocket remains.
Well, I mean, you
the
can't
same.
change anatomy. Listen,
No,
anatomy
that's
is just
canon.
anatomy.
That's
just the way
fact.
it goes.
That's canon.
That's
That's
just
my canon.
science.
And then like the scales turn into sand. So like this is how I feel like my merm people function. Everything else I can explain away with magic, but this is science. This is the right of science.
Fair. So what is so sexy about? Why are we also like drawn to the sex part of mermaids?
Because they have a tail. You're like, what? How are they doing it? Don't you think?
I think that it is a
I mean,
little
other
bit
things have
like
tails.
yeah,
But like their whole body.
Yeah, but like why are we humans like, oh, this is like we're drawn to this as, and I don't mean like sex. I mean like why are we drawn to like the sensuality of like, is it because of water again? Like is it?
I think it's because mermaids have been
Because
sexualized
fish are not
forever.
sexy.
Right.
Yeah.
Fish are not sexy. I've never been like, look at that clownfish.
No, fish are fucking weird.
I think
Look at that clownfish.
octopus could be sexy. I don't know.
Well, we've certainly seen tentacle romance.
We have seen tentacles,
Sure.
and I have a tentacle. It's probably because I do consider these like all water creatures are fair game in the mermaid world. And so I think for me it is the mystery, right? Like the mystery. Mermaids have been sexualized in nautical communities, like fishermen, pirates. Like you get a sexy mermaid tattooed on your bicep, right? Like that kind of imagery has really defined what a mermaid is. And then you have like a girl or a woman with these like tiny clamshell things or no clamshells, right? Like just her boobies, free the boobies. And it's beautiful, right? Like, and so I think that then we start getting into, well, what do the guys look like, right? If you Google merman Christmas ornaments,
I will do that for everyone.
it's this collection of the gaudiest. I have two of them. Gaudiest Christmas ornaments that ever
Oh my
existed.
goodness. They look
like, complimentary.
amazing. Everybody's getting one of these for Christmas from me.
And then
Hang
I
on.
bought myself one for Christmas. I'm going back to New Orleans. I'm going to buy myself another one because there's a store that just sells these. Like all of their stock is these like merman holiday ornaments.
Look at these. Oh, look at that. Look at the grooms. How cute are they?
They're also gay mermen, I should say.
I mean, obviously.
Look at this one with a baguette and a bottle of wine.
And his tail is in the
That's
French
not a
flag.
baguette, Sarah.
That is a merman. That's many baguettes.
Oh my God. I'm saving this link. Everybody look down. This
There's
is
a
going to be the
Canadian
chapter
Mountie.
title. Here, this one with a dolphin friend. This
I
one's
love
hot.
that
This
one.
is a hot
That's the
mermaid.
that's the merman I want.
I'm
But
going to
look
send
at
this
how
to Eric right now. This is
That's
going to be the
merman I want.
$39.
they're like this big. They're hand painted, hand everything.
Go down a little. What's the point of the one who's a ghost and you
I'm
can't
busy
see
doing
him?
work for this podcast. Important work for this podcast.
Wait,
I'm sending
Sarah,
this
look
to
at the
Eric.
ghost.
Oh,
What's the point? I'm like, the whole point is a sexy merman. And
what
you,
I
like,
want to know is there is somebody in the world, and I don't know who they are, but I want to, who decorates their tree exclusively with these guys.
You know, give me another book deal and it might just be me because that's when I'll be able to afford it.
Look at this one. Punk rock. Sid Vicious
rock
mermaid.
Like,
You guys, we are going to put this link in the show notes. You can all go buy these for your friends for Christmas.
oh my God.
Oh my God. Neat. This one. This one is octopus. It has tentacles.
and it's called the stiff one. They all have funny names.
I love it.
Flaming Bottom,
Oh my
First
God, there are
Responder.
4 full pages of these. They are all
There's also
close to
they also come in,
$40.
like good mermen. They also come in many sizes. There's a 2-foot one that my boss one time
A
gave me.
2-foot one.
He gave me a 2-foot merman of this style to celebrate my launch for there's a Black Lives Matter merman. It is literally insane how many kinds of mer people there are. They also have ferrymen, which I bought one for Holly Black because I just thought it would be hilarious.
Sure.
And
This one is both. Oh my God. This one is both angel and merman.
Can
And
you
it is
say-
called Gabriel, but you spell it with a Y.
Oh boy.
This is perfect.
Listen.
I'm
sorry. The
this
contest
might-
is over now. We're shopping.
This
No,
is the
we're shopping.
greatest episode of the podcast we've ever done.
This week's episode of Fated Mates is brought to you by author MJ Etkind, author of Dishwasher Safe.
Well, I mean, there couldn't be a better episode for this one, Jen. This is a mermaid book.
Perfect.
So, Elise Latu has been running away from the suffocating expectations of her mother for basically her entire life. And she has finally done the full job by swimming as a mermaid as
Amazing.
far away from her home in the Pacific Islands as she could. And she is now set up as a chef at the hottest new restaurant in Boston. By day, she walks among humans and cooks some of the best food that Boston has ever had. By night, she is bound to the ocean, forced to transform back into her mermaid form and rejoin the thriving mer community off the coast of Boston. Listen, I love this.
I'm just curious if she went all the way around or through the Panama Canal. But you know what? We're going to keep going.
We're going to find we'll suss it out for everybody. Here's the deal though, like she is sort of done with this whole the whole expectations of being a mermaid, and she is sort of convinced that dating a human man will solve a lot of like her personal issues.
Of course.
Luckily, Sean
Always.
McClary is the
Men
newest
make your life
dishwasher. We all know that, right? Human men especially.
Sure.
Luckily, Sean McClary is the newest dishwasher at the restaurant, but there's something up with him too. He doesn't seem to know how to like operate the dishwasher. He's also living kind of a double life himself. He's a fisherman by day. This is like big Lady Hawk vibes, and a dishwasher by night. And so when Elise kind of swoops in to rescue him from a rogue kitchen appliance, she wonders if maybe he is the human man of her dreams.
So if you're looking for a fantasy rom-com with forbidden love, secret identities, and a very cute coworker meet cute, then Dishwasher Safe might be for you. If you click on the chapter title right now, you'll be taken to buy the book, which is available in print, ebook, and audio. Thank you to MJ Eckkind for sponsoring this week's episode.
Merpeople have rarely worked in fiction. Like, and I don't, it's always like, if I look at my sales, like there's always a little dip when I do mermaids.
Well, this is the really interesting thing, because obviously we are going to get to recommending some books on this episode. It's not just about mermaid anatomy. But there are not, you would think, in the early 10s, right, there was such a rise, or in the sort of late aughts, early 10s, there was such a huge rise in paranormal. Huge. Like you couldn't, it was what we've seen like with romantasy.
Yeah.
I mean, everywhere.
We go in cycles every decade. Yeah. It's fine.
And so I was looking and I was like, there must be like mermaids in here. And it is very difficult to find. There are, throw a stone, hit a vampire, a werewolf, a fairy, or whatever. But like a mermaid, in fact, this whole podcast was built on Immortals After Dark, which is basically Monster Mash, right? And there are no mermaids. I mean, there are mermaids like there are no
mermaids in like, Stooky Stackhouse.
Yeah.
Like in that series either.
There's something really interesting about it, because back in the day, in like the 80s and 90s in romance, there was this sort of adage that like, if you put a romance on a boat, you were going to ruin your career. Like, boats were not.
Well, it's a setting issue, I think, for sure, right? I mean,
it's a setting issue. It's logistics. Yeah. It's can you flesh out, no pun intended, the world enough to create something? And so you always bring the mer person on land, but then, so how is the story limited that way, right?
Right.
And so when I sold my book,
can't take a human back,
right? That's why,
right?
Nobody wants gills
in my book, but
I think the mammal choice is smart, because nobody wants gills.
Well, you have to have gills. My people have gills, but they seal when you're on air. Yeah. And so it is this thing, like when I sold my debut novel, I sold it in 1 week. Like it went out on submission. I sold it in a week. I sold it for $2.
Not common, everyone.
But it was also because there was that lady who she was like the troll romance lady. Do you remember? Amanda Hawken.
Oh, yeah.
Amanda Hawken had sold a mermaid series for 7 figures.
I remember that.
And so all the publishers were like, okay, we got to do mermaids. We got to do mermaids. And so they rushed. So there was like my book got bought, Tara Lynn Child's Forgive My Fins, Tracy Deebs, who's now Tracy Wolf, Tempest Rising, Anna Banks of Poseidon, like
but that was all YA.
All YA. It was all YA. There were so many. It was 2012 was the merman year. And it just went to show, like, I did have a mermaid novel when I was a kid that really haunted me called Serena by Donna Jo Napoli. It was a YA novel. Okay, YA didn't exist in 1999. So
it was like kids,
a juvenile novel. Yeah, that's what they called it. And it was about a mermaid in Greece who her and her sisters, and this is where they confuse the mermaid and the siren mythology, which are two separate things, but they have become one thing, and it just, it doesn't bother me, but it's just sort of like,
but a little bothers you.
A little bit, yeah.
It's all right. We can tell the truth here.
And I get it. Like it's easy to fuse the two, but they're technically two different. Anyway, so these mermaid sirens crash a ship, and she picks the mermaid decides to save one. His name is Philoctetes. And imagine me reading that as a 11-year-old being like, Philoctetes? Titties? Philoctetes. I'm pretty sure it's Philoctetes now that I'm
Sure.
now that I'm a
Now
mature
that you're an adult,
Right.
yeah,
that has
you figured
taken
it
like
out.
a
Right.
great
You cracked the
class.
code.
Like Uranus.
Like
Yes.
you're, yeah. And so she's like, and then they fall in love and they have sex. And I was like, but how?
Yeah.
But how? I barely just learned from my girlfriends at a slumber party how people have sex. How will they? And so that really just got me started.
Yeah.
It was
And that's
that
where
book.
you realized it had to be front to back, not front to front.
When yes, a piece of core knowledge. When was Aquaman with Jason Momoa?
Oh, wasn't that like that was more recently, no?
Yeah, but did that cause any kind? No, it was like real recent. But like, did that cause a blip? I guess he's not. But I feel like that's like in comics, you have like Namor,
Well, you would think
right?
that
And
the Little Mermaid
Namor's
would
so
have done
sexy.
it. But
right?
like in Roman, like I went back into the deep here. I mean,
Mhm.
no pun intended. Like back to Little
Yeah.
Mermaid time in romance, and like
Yeah, but Sarah, back then, people were not looking to children's movies as inspiration for adult romance.
Beauty
Do you
and the
think
Beast,
that-
like built the movie that made libraries in historicals.
It is not. I will tell you that it is
I
not.
guess.
Yeah, like it is not a trend that catches on really well. I write it because I just love mer people and the mythology, and like if you threaten me with a good time, I'm gonna write. It's because I'm gonna write a mermaid novel. Um, and I do think that like it's sort of publishers don't always know how to market it. They give them the same covers.
Right, it's
Yeah,
all
right.
waterscape.
So it's all waterscape, and so it's really even one of the ones I'm going to talk about. Like it's not obviously a merman in it. If you would look at the cover, you would never know it.
Mhm.
It's not even in the copy until I read it, and I was like, "What?" And so it's a difficult publishing thing.
Publishers know this stuff, right? And so it's funny to me, you say it's not in the copy. Like there are a lot of things that for a long time you didn't put in copy. Like there's sort of famously, if you had a widow in your book, you wouldn't put it in the copy because people wouldn't read
Yeah.
it. Like, so I think like there's, publishers are scared of it.
Yeah, publishers are scared of it. They never know what to do with it. Even like there was like a one big series in YA by Jennifer Donnelly, who's was a huge author at that time. Like even her mermaid series, like sort of like you never really saw them
Yeah.
as much as you saw her other
Yeah.
books.
Mhm.
So there's sort of this like curse of the mer person in romance and in publishing.
Mhm.
And I don't know what it would take because I was trying to pitch things around the time Aquaman was coming out and around the time The Little Mermaid was coming out, and publishers was just not interested in cross promoting or being like that's not enough, like that's not enough to carry it. So it's definitely a struggle.
But I mean, I feel like Cinderella and Beauty and the Beast are like bigger than Disney to me.
Mhm.
Yes,
Right? Like those are like foundational in a way that's like bigger. But like to me, The Little Mermaid like is Disney. I mean, that's not fair. I know that it obviously isn't. But like in terms of like the way it like kind of created it in our like it entered a lot of people's consciousness as a children's movie as opposed to other things. I do feel like at that time that was different.
Our generation, and we were children when it came out, but like Splash also, right?
Oh yeah,
Had
right.
to
But
have
I mean,
had to have impacted romance in some way because it is like a one of the things I did want to say, which is not about sex, is I think the other reason why it's sort of naturally there's a natural sort of sense to a romance embracing mermaids, even if we haven't seen it is very conflict laden, right? Like rarely do we see two mermaids falling for each other in these books. It's almost always like one of them is a mermaid and one of them is a human. And there is that tension of like one will have the human can never go like into the deep.
unless
Zoraida's figured it out. Yeah. unless. And so so that sort of tension is a natural conflict for romance because like you are star-crossed.
Who's going to change, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love that star-crossed thing, but you have to sort of keep making it fresh every time.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, how do you do that? How do you bring in conflict? Because I love plot. I wish I could function on. I would love to write a book that is just all vibes, but then I'm like, here's a 17-step quest that they must embark on.
Your instinct for world building is antithetical to vibes.
I know. I would like to do it because then I'm like, I hate plot holes and I hate like figuring this out. But just kidding. I actually do love figuring it out.
Let's recommend some books. But before we do that, can I say my favorite like factoid about Splash the movie? Because I'm older than all of you and I saw it in the theaters. Is like Madison, you know, her name's Madison. She picks it off of out
of a sign.
And now that's just like a totally a usual name. But like at the time, I remember being like, that's such a weird name. That's like what I like vividly remember being like, yeah, that's so weird.
And
like
Splash.
that movie, invented the name Madison.
And your cat was named Madison.
No, my cat was named Madison after a president, everybody.
Well,
Sorry.
so was the avenue.
I guess so. Sure.
Madison Avenue.
I cannot speak to that. I know what names. I knows what's named
So
after.
Jen does not want you to think
town.
she named Madison after Daryl Hannah. Is what
I did
saying.
not.
She
is
did
what
not.
I'm saying. Yes, it's named after James Madison. Sure, same thing.
Jen's cat and
Yeah.
Daryl Hannah in Splash have the same name.
Rest in peace,
Naming
Maddie.
structure. This week's episode of Fated Mates is sponsored by Alexandra Harvey, author of The Scandalous Spinster, my favorite flavor of spinster.
The best kind. Sarah, Lady Clara has a secret. She may seem like a wallflower, but in reality, she is writing scandalous romances that are taking society by storm, and no one knows, not even her fellow members of the Spinster Society. The only one who does know, her blackmailer.
Uh-oh. She better get a man to help her.
Luckily, Captain Bram Thorne is on the case.
Is that the greatest romance hero name?
It is a
Captains are really the realm of the historical romance.
It's true. So she is at a notorious house party. She essentially, one of the other spinsters has gone missing. And so she's like, I'll take the case. And he is the one who realizes that she like might be putting herself in real danger. And so Captain Bram Thorne and Claire are gonna probably do some shenanigans. They are going to discover who the blackmailer is. They're gonna rescue another lady. I love it.
Perfect. Well, if you love a Regency historical with a lot of spice, only one bed, bodyguard vibes, and a like teeny tiny age gap situation, this one is absolutely for you. You can read The Scandalous Spinster right now in print, ebook, or with your monthly subscription to Kindle Unlimited. And thanks as always to Alexander Harvey for sponsoring this week's episode. Zoraida, as our guest, would you like to go first?
I would. So the first book is Witchful Thinking by Celestine Martin. The line is a match made in magic, and it's about a witch, Lucinda Carraway, who lives in a magical town called Freya Grove. I'm pretty sure it's in New Jersey, and she meets a really cute guy named Alexander Dwyer, who is a merman. And he's been, traveling the world, and Lucy's in this sort of like in between life situation. And so it is all cozy. It's super cozy, witchy, romance, HEA. But Lucy has also hexed herself, I was really surprised. Like, this is like I wrote like a raunchier version because we have a similar premise, but it's like a testament to like, you could take two premises and write completely different books. So this is like super cozy, witchy town. Like, I have my pumpkin spice latte ready to read it. And it's very sweet.
So Do you want to speak to like the anatomy question or no?
No,
Not relevant
it
here.
does not go. It does not go into mermaid anatomy.
Okay.
Yeah.
The cozy vibes are what,
Yeah, the cozy vibes. I mean, imagine like it's so cozy, and here's this tentacle penis.
Right. They don't quite go together. We've talked about Celestine Martin's books before. Like she really does write like a cozy, witchy, like it's perfect. You're perfect fall vibes for sure.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay.
But if you look at the cover, that's what I was saying. Like you can't tell.
You would never know. You would never
You would never know. So now you do.
The secret is out.
Jen, do you want to go next or do you want me to go next?
Sure. No, I can go next.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're going to recommend some books though. Some adult romances. So like mermaid romance. And
almost
like you
all
said,
YA.
Yeah, a lot of it is YA, which I thought was really interesting.
Ooh.
And a lot of it, it's not as many. I mean, if you put in like vampire romance, it's
Forget
like
it.
you
You'll
broke
be there
in
for
Goodreads,
a
right?
year.
There's
You'll
800
have
pages.
right. And then if you do mermaids, there's only like 4 pages.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, oh, it really is pretty different. So
Actually,
I
2.
ended up picking and reading a book for the first time called The Mermaid's Night by Jill Miles. And everybody, that's Jessica Clare. And she has been around for a minute, right? And this book is actually from 2011. And part of the reason I read it is because, this is like me making shit up, everybody. I want to be clear. It is a time travel book with a mermaid. And I was like, oh, I'm in, right? Because sometimes books feel like either they were a dare or literally an author was like, all right, I'm going to pick this shit out of a hat and make it work. Right. And that was like the vibe of like this blurb. So basically in The Mermaid's Night, Lee Sunderland, it begins with her dying in a car accident. A drunk driver has hit her and she's like basically standing on the side of the road, like in her non-corporeal kind of aura self or whatever, looking at the wreck. And her fairy godmother rolls up next to her and is like, real shame that happened. And she's like, who the hell are you? She's like, well, I'm your fairy godmother. And Lee is like, well, you have clearly done a very shitty job. And the fairy godmother, whose name is Muffin, was like, God, I know, I feel really terrible about it. I was kind of busy doing something else. So in order to make it up to you, I will essentially offer you can either like go to heaven right now, or you can essentially like spin the wheel with me and you will like essentially have to live out a fairy tale for a month. And if you can make the like hero fall in love with you, then you can like get your life back. Get a life back. Not this one. This one's over. You're done. And Lee is not really paying attention to the terms of service here. And so she ends up being placed in the story The Little Mermaid, of course. But the setting is medieval England. And so what happens is she like kind of like wakes up. She's like swimming around in the surf and she's like, what the fuck happened to me? I was really delighted. This is all set up, by the way. It's all like chapter 1. She's like, what's happening? And she's like, and Muffin's like, I told you, it's the Little Mermaid. You gotta swim off land. And she's like, I have fins. She's like, don't worry. Once you get out there, they'll turn back into legs again. And you won't be able to talk. But you have to make this guy fall in love with you. And the guy is a warlord. Everybody knows I love a warlord.
Jen's
His name
favorite.
is Baron. He's a Baron. Royce Fitzwarren. And so he and his men are trying to reclaim his ancestral castle from like the bad guy. And when they see her on the beach, and she's naked, of course, she has gills, but they have sealed up, and her legs are legs. He assumes that she is a spy for the other guy. So he takes her back to the castle and she won't talk. And he's just convinced that's like a pretext. But then she ends up saving him from a rogue arrow. And he's like, and everyone's like, boy, she didn't yell or anything when that arrow hit her because she pushed him out of the way. And so he's like, oh, maybe she really has lost her voice. Like anybody at that moment would have like made some noise. So now, the part that's really funny is the fairy godmother is kind of like, you are doing a terrible job. She checks in with her every night. You're doing a terrible job. And at one point kind of is like, listen, you have this month. If you can't make it happen, you're dead. So you might as well do all the things you wanted to do with your life. And of course, Lee's a virgin. So she's like, oh, I'm going to definitely do it with this guy then, because why not? What do I, this is my one chance. And the next morning, the fairy godmother's like, you gave it away for free. And she's like, what is this? And she's like, medieval England. It is medieval England. It was just really fun. I had a great time reading it. It definitely is just like I don't know. It just was like a real romp. I had a great time. Super fun. So that's The Mermaid's Night.
So, I've talked about this before. I think to Zoraida for sure, but to others as well. My first pick is Marjorie M. Liu's Soul Song, which is, so everybody in the whole world knows Marjorie M. Liu for her YA novels or graphic novels. Like, she is a legend. Before she did all of that, she wrote romance novels, and she wrote a fantastic series of paranormal romance novels called the Dirk and Steele series. And the concept behind this, I think there are like 12 of them. There are a lot of them. Maybe not 12, but a lot of them. Oh no, there are 11 of them.
Oh my God.
Yeah, there are 11 of them. And the premise of this series is like a paranormal detective agency. And they like the members of the Dirk and Steele agency like protect the innocent. And they like get involved in all these like paranormal shenanigans, right? So this book though, Soul Song, and it just the conversation that we've been having makes me think like, oh, this makes a lot of sense, because it's deep into the series. It's book 6 of 11. And it's for me, it's like a full standalone. You don't have to have read any of the other stuff. You don't have to know about the world, etc. And I think there are 2 reasons why. One is, we've talked about this lots on the podcast, but when you put a human into a paranormal romance, although the heroine of this is not technically a human, she does not know about Mer world. And so like you can sort of elide, like you can elide a lot of the early world building in the series, because she needs to relearn like everything. So you can start there. It's another on-ramp into the series. But also, it makes me realize that like these mermaid books in larger series kind of have to be standalones because of the space that they are in, right? The water. Anyway, the premise of this is this is a reverse Little Mermaid, in the sense that MCal is our hero. He is not a mermaid. He is not a merman. He's something else. He's like a different kind of mer creature, like underwater creature, but he's basically a merman. And he is he is enslaved by a sea witch who requires him, who can sort of manipulate him to do whatever she wants. And his particular song, he's like a siren. His particular song can steal the souls of people. So she sends him out as her strong man to steal souls from random people. We meet him stealing the soul of like a young woman, and he is just like broken by this job, like, but he can't stop doing it. Like he is beholden to her whims. And so he meets our heroine, Kit, who is a world-class violinist, and also a witch. We discover that she's a witch. She knows she's a witch, but she has like sort of put her witchiness aside. And her unique and terrifying power is that she can see imminent death. So this book begins with her at we meet Kit playing a concert in like a world-class concert hall. And I think the line is literally like, she looks into the audience and she's like, a woman in the front row had a knife sticking out of her eye. Right. So I should say this is like, Marjorie does not pull away from like the darkness of a paranormal world. Like this really feels like an old school paranormal in that, like of the Christine Fian, like off that limb of the tree because of the way that like she's not afraid to show darkness. But anyway, so MCAL, the Sea Witch, has requested that MCAL go and steal the soul of Kit so that the Sea Witch can have Kit's powers. And when he gets there to do this, he realizes that like they are fated. And so the whole book is a fated mate story where he is compelled to take her soul, but also compelled to protect her at all costs. I mean, perfect. It is incredible. All the things that people love about Marjorie are in this book. Like, it is so sharp. It is so funny. She is so clever. And all of the kind of like rich mental world building, the kind of every creature in the book is really fascinating. All of the structure of the world is really fascinating. But basically, this is a book where these two people are drawn together and absolutely set up to ruin each other. And it is
The best.
the best.
You guys are so good at talking about books.
So are you. What is your next book?
My next book is called, it's actually the second book in a series, but I read the second book first because it was the one that was available on online, on audio. They're both available on audio now. It's called Tentacles and Triathlons.
Ooh,
A Leviathan fitness novel.
Jen
and so
came online.
it's kind of like a it has cozy vibes, but it is also it goes deep into the anatomy. It's a male queer romance, and it's about basically monsters that go to the same gym, and they've kind of come out of the closet. And so the first book, which I'm gonna go back to read, is a werewolf book, and the second book is about the human brother of the sister. And so his name is Cyrus. So it's Cyrus and Reese. One is a tentacled creature. He's like all blue. He like does not have any human features, and he walks on tentacles. And he's an artist. He just wants to live his life like peacefully, lift some weights, go to the gym, do some art. But a lot of people still fear monsters. And Reese is somebody who's trying to learn how to swim. So he's going to get lessons from Cyrus, this tentacled man. And they have such great chemistry. The sex scenes, I was like, I couldn't wait to get to the sex scenes because I was like, I really hope this author just takes a swing and talks about like where things go, and she does such a good job. And I really loved it. So it's especially if you love tentacles and are curious about what that would look like in a very bite-sized, only like 200 pages novella. Like, you can get this done. And so every book in the series has different monster pairings, but of course I went first for the one that
Sure.
had the mer people.
Monster Gym.
Yes. Like, God, you still have to work out when you're a monster.
I
What a
know, you
drag.
gotta look good.
I mean, I guess unless you're meeting cute people there, fine. But just feels like I really did get stuck on that for a while. And then I was like,
No, but I was
mean,
glad when she said 200 pages because I was like, Monster Gym is not a 400-page book. That is a 200-page
It's not.
Oh.
That's what I love about this series. They're really bite-sized. I love that it's called Leviathan Fitness. I just like it's really
Yeah, that's
lighthearted.
amazing.
Yeah. And so I have a few more backups, but like, because I could just talk about mer books all day. But yeah, so that was my second pick. Oh, the title again is Tentacles and Triathlons.
Excellent.
An unfair advantage, I mean, I would think.
This week's episode of Fated Mates is sponsored by Avon Books, publishers of Alyssa Cole's How to Find a Princess.
So this is the second book in the Runaway Royal series, in which we have Makeda Hicks, who is going through something. She has lost her job and her girlfriend in one fell swoop. So the last thing she's in the mood for is to rehash the story of her grandmother's infamous summer fling with a runaway prince, which sounds honestly like a good story. I'd be telling everyone. Anyway, an investigator named Biznaria from the World Federation of Monarchies has appeared to ask questions. And so this sleek and sexy investigator exudes exactly the kind of chaos that organized and efficient Makeda finds irresistible. Even though Bez is determined to drag her into the world of royalty, Makeda doesn't want to have anything to do with it until a threat to her grandmother's livelihood changes her mind. So Makeda and Bez are on a transatlantic adventure with a crew of lovable weirdos, a fake marriage, and only one bed on the high seas.
Perfect.
What more could you ask for?
Well, if you also want a fake relationship, an only one bed, and an Anastasia retelling on the high seas, How to Find a Princess might be just the book for you. You can find it right now in a new trade paperback version, also an ebook, audiobook, or with your monthly subscription to Kindle Unlimited. If your podcasting app supports it, you can click on the chapter title right now to be taken to buy the book. And thanks to Avon Books and Alyssa Cole for sponsoring this week's episode.
Okay, so I am going to talk about a professional mermaid instead of a real mermaid for this one, which is this is a book called One Night Standard by E.F. Dodd. I just want to say, like, I worked on this book. This is how I know about it. I was an editor on this book, but I thought it was perfect for this. And in this book, Coral Triton is a professional mermaid. Talk about name is destiny. That's like her real name. And she essentially has worked in like Miami and
Like, you mean
like
a professional mermaid, like she swims in fish tanks
like
at
swims
bars
around in
and
a
things.
tank.
Like
and
the white sheet.
exactly.
What are they called?
Do you remember that bar in
sheet.
New York? What was that called?
The one in Coney Island?
No, there was one like on the sorry, Jen. There was one like downtown on the west side, like right on the west side
Really?
highway. And it was a giant warehouse and it had like mermaid tanks. And it was this like scene. Like
There's a Netflix documentary about people who live as mermaids.
So I think that what the author told me is she watched that and was so inspired that this was like
That's really cool.
It's a hard life.
Yeah.
There's also one of those bars, in Montana.
No, I mean, and that's why. So, like, it's a really hard life because there's barely enough work, right? So, Coral, the way the book starts is she's essentially she's in Vegas because there is a new Vegas hotel opening and you know how Vegas hotels are, right? Like, they just have like a theme. And this place, it's all like underwater or whatever. And they're like building these huge mermaid tanks. And so she has the ability to like get like essentially a full-time long-term job in Vegas in this hotel. And she's not only going to be one of the mermaids swimming around, but she'll also have the opportunity to like sort of like do show running essentially, right? Like sort of like plan the, you know, how it all looks or whatever. So she's like moving to Vegas for this job, which is like a real coup because it is hard to find full-time mermaiding work. So she is at the airport and she meets this really cute guy, and it's this horrifying moment because like this huge bottle of lube like shoots out of her bag because apparently this is how you get your mermaid tail on.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You lube up and like slip into this thing. And his name is Jamie Standard. He is from Boston. His sister is in Vegas, and he is sort of sequestered in Vegas because a deal of his is in danger after a like newspaper article that like painted him as like a real rogue. And so, you know, the guy on the other side of the deal is like, you know, old man who cares about such things. And so Jamie's partner is like, get out of here for a while. Like, we'll just wait till things cool off. So what happens is he and Coral meet in the airport. They have a super hot one night stand, like crazy hot. And they're both like never going to see each other again, except of course it turns out that like his sister, Jocelyn, is her boss. And she sees the insane chemistry between them and essentially like talks them into like sort of like pretending to date. It's not like true fake dating. In order to essentially like kind of like there was like some really good social media vibes and she just wants to like capitalize on that. So Quarles always like, I'm not going to Boston. This is like the job of a lifetime for me. And like, will his association with this mermaid like ruin the deal even further is kind of like all of the, so there's like some good conflict in it. But basically I just thought it was really cool to have a book about a professional mermaid as like the main character. So that's a
I love
one night
that.
standard.
That's
by
really
E.F. Dodd.
cool.
Yeah, it was really
The-
That's a
fun.
great
The,
twist.
the Netflix documentary is called Mer People.
Okay. Yeah.
The bar that I was talking about is called the Coral Room, but I don't think it exists anymore. And there is a there's a performance artist in New York City named Julie Atlas Muse who worked at the Coral Room and now like every once in a while does these like performs as a mermaid around the city. So if we'll post links in show notes, but there's her website there's a gorgeous photograph of her like mermaiding around.
Yeah.
Okay, I went deep, as I said, back into the annals of romance to Harlequin Nocturne, which
Ooh.
I know, which is
That is deep cut.
an old Harlequin line that was paranormal. It was basically the category paranormal line of Harlequin. And I mean, like, I think probably one of the only, I don't want to say the only because I'm not 1,000% sure, but like definitely one of the only paranormal category lines. There is a series that I've not read all of them. I've only read the first one. So, enter at your own risk. Siren's Secret by Debbie Herbert is, the really interesting thing about these old nocturnes is they were always like sort of edging into romantic suspense. So this book begins with Shelley, our mermaid,
A+.
who is like surfaces to the water, to the air, carrying a dead body that has been dumped by a serial killer. Like it's wrapped up in plastic. And she found that she saw him dump it. Like she's been seeing this man dump it. And she's like, I have to figure out like who this man is. Because obviously he's doing very bad things. The problem is she has two. So Shelley is half mermaid. Her dad, I think, is a human. And she has two sisters who are full mermaid. And they all like live in the water. And the sisters are like, okay, this is great that you want to like get to the bottom of this and like commit vengeance on this terrible man. We agree. And like mermaid justice is real and we can enact it here. But you are now messing with a crime scene. Like, so we have to figure out like what's going on. And Shelley's like, no, it's fine. I've long been in love with the sheriff.
Of course.
Because Shelley's human
sheriff.
job, you guys, is she's a swim instructor. And
Of
so like,
course.
she works at the Y teaching swim.
Slip in your feet. They don't get too far.
So she has known the swim instructor because he has a brother who he takes swim lessons from her. And so like she's kind of pined after him. And he is like at his wit's end with this serial killering thing. The serial killer like sees Shelley in the water one night and like throws a knife, which like lodges itself in her tail. It's like it's very exciting. She ends up like revealing herself to the sheriff because, she knows all these things about the murder. And he's like, you know a lot of things about the murder. Is it possible you are the murderer? Which is what happens when you tamper with crime scenes, mermaids. And so it's a very sort of like fun, fast, contemporary, like it's a fun, fast category romance. Like it goes exactly the way you think it's going to go. Everybody's like, everything's tied up great at the end. And I do think there is, and then I think the other two mermaids are the other two sisters are the heroines of the other two books. Anyway, it's kind of adorable. But I will say, I checked this morning because I had read it a million trillion years ago, and I just want to point out that they only have sex in human form. No pockets.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Which might have been a part of the Harlequin rules.
Yeah, I bet that was
back
like a
in the
rule,
day.
right?
This was
No
published in
bestiality.
2013.
are there more recent ones? I feel
There
like
are
the
some
one.
recent ones.
Yeah.
So I haven't read this, so I didn't put it as because I just started it on audio, and so I haven't gotten very far, but I do like the writing style. It's called Whispers of the Deep by Emma Hamm with 2 M's. And it's in a fantasy, in like a underwater world where the heroine is an architect or engineer who keeps this city called Beta. It's an underwater city running. And there's so she has this like awful foreman kind of person yelling at her. And then there are like mer people around there. And the reason I picked this up is because um his name is Argus. I don't know how to pronounce it, but he takes her. He because they form a bond together, and so he steals her away from her. Uh, this city that he's trying to destroy, messing with his people, and I picked this up because somewhere in one of when I was looking for new mermaid books, this one says that there's 2 penises. So I can't vouch for it yet because I haven't gotten, I'm still in chapter 2, because I found it last night. But yeah, so there's more recent mer books.
Yeah.
The covers are so much nicer.
Yeah.
A lot of them are in the indie space. And
Yes.
because publishers are just not going to take the risk until something does well.
Holly Trent I like Holly Trent's books a lot, and she has a 2-item series of the Hooked series that are both mer people. It's like a brother and sister, and they each have their own book.
Oh, I like Holly too. Is that new? That must be new.
I don't think it's 2021, but that was pandemic times, right? Exactly. It's called Wish Out of Water is the first one, and it has a terrific cover. And the second one is called Water Under the Bridge. And I came across these too late to read them, but I was really like, oh, I really like Holly's books a lot. And like I said, this Wish Out of Water book has a hot cover. So I am, that's on my list of things to read.
So I just got one sent to me this week from Tor called, I got an email and they were like, we're publishing this.
Oh my God. What?
Isn't this cool? Everybody, Zoraida's responding to the cover. Tor sent me an email and they were like, we've got this book coming out in February and it's mermaid fantasy. Is that something you're interested in? And I was like, well, if you can get it to me before this weekend, I would love to look at it before our podcast. So I have I have begun it.
Say the name.
I will. Okay.
Yeah.
It's called Upon a Starlit Tide by Kel Woods, and it has this the cover is
gorgeous.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's also historical. It's set in France in 1758. And it's a mashup of Little Mermaid and Cinderella.
Oh my God.
But the premise is like the heroine has been she is the daughter of a shipbuilder, and she has these sisters who are all sort of running around historical romance style trying to find like great marriages, and she is obsessed with the ocean and no one knows why.
Dun, dun, dun.
Maybe you could imagine why. And so she rescues a drowning man from the ocean. He's very mysterious. He seems to know a lot of things about her and about her world, and then like kind of draws her into this like world of magic and paranormal creatures. And then she puts on a sea glass slipper and discovers that she is more than it seems. And I have sort of flipped through it to figure out if it looks like it's just a standalone. It is not a first book in a series. But it also looks great. There's an old friend from her like best friend from childhood is a sexy dude who's also romping around through this book. So I think there's probably, if I had to guess, I would say there's probably a little bit of a love triangle or some sort of like mysterious triangle happening in this book. But it's certainly gorgeous. And if you love fantasy and historicals, this one might just be for you. That's Upon a Starlit Tide by Kelwood.
And is that already
out?
out?
No, it's not out. It's not out until February. So you'll have to pre-order it.
I'm gonna be like, bro, Tor, hook it up.
Yeah.
Hello.
And I am your person. Jen and Sarah know.
I mean, look, a lot of the mer books that I have read have been like in trad have been either literary or horror.
Yeah.
And so like there's like The Deep by Myra Grant, and Cassandra Caw had one that was like,
why are they horror? I mean, I guess there's monster.
I mean, they're like they can drag you under the water and just eat your flesh, you know. This one's YA, but it is
not that kind of eating.
But it is a good romance.
I mean, I'm not opposed.
Alexandra Christos. Oh my God, Alexandra Christos. It's a YA book called To Kill a Kingdom, and it's about a mermaid who has to steal hearts. And she's not going to steal this one guy's heart. It's YA, but it's so sexy. Like the writing is like sexy. Like the writing is beautiful in that way. And it's like the dark version of The Little Mermaid. But it's YA. And it came out many, many moons ago. But there's some out there. I wish there was more always. I wish there were more by like, from different countries and different cultures. What do mermaids look like when they're not like redheaded? So I that this could go on forever on my end.
Well, Zoraida, thank you so much for coming today, and always being willing to jump in when we're like, we don't know. Tell everybody.
Letting me traumatize you.
No, not at all. I mean, you did traumatize Jen a little with the whale penis, but I helped.
Oh, was that Zoraida who did that to me?
No, it was me. It was me. But it was her idea.
It was my idea.
So we talked about the Captive Merman's Promise.
Yes.
Which is out now in print, in audio, print, ebook.
Ebook, yes.
You can find it all. And then what do you have coming next, or what else have you got recently that people should check out?
I have so many books, but my
that is what I know about you.
My next book doesn't come out till 2026. It's called The Fall of Rebel Angels.
Okay, well, we'll talk about angels on the next podcast.
Yeah. And so I'm working on trying to get some things out in 2025 because traditional publishing takes so long. So I'll be working on some Zoey Castile things. But it's weird. For the first time, I don't have anything slated for 2025. I just this year I published a Star Wars middle grade where they let me create a character called Churro the Hutt, who's like a Hutt who loves animals and bugs instead of being a crime lord. And I had an anthology called Fairies Never Lie, which was the next book in the series of anthologies with magical creatures. Also, did you know that in Mermaids Never Drown, Adriana Herrera has a short story, and that one is a romance about like a siren and a bastard sea prince who are trying to like revolt against like a corrupt king in a very Adriana Herrera way. Right. And so I keep telling her to make that into a book. Comes over to the dark fantasy side, or the dark side of fantasy.
Love it.
Fantasy after dark, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
That should be the next anthology, Fantasy After Dark.
Yeah, but everywhere else, I'm on Instagram at Zoraida Solo, and Threads is the same thing. And I just made a TikTok, but I don't remember my handle because I made it and never logged back in.
Well, Zoraida, come back on when it's time to talk about angels.
Oh, I would love
Yes.
to. I would
And
love to.
because that's another one that we're going to need 2 years to sort
Yeah,
out.
right.
And thank you so much for being with us.
Thank
today.
you both. Thank you both.
All right, let's see. So you've been listening to Zoraida Córdova. She's brilliant. Check out all of her books. Find her at zoraidacordova.com. Is that right, Zoraida? I just made that up. Okay. Find her at zoraidacordova.com and check show notes for all of the many links and the books that we've talked about today. We will not put the photograph of the whale penis in there, but we will link to it. And then
Look at your own discretion.
I'm Sarah McLean. I'm here with my friend Jen Prokop. We are Fated Mates. You can find us at fatedmates.net and every Wednesday in your favorite podcasting app. You can also find us online at all of the social media places. Although now that the election is over, we are closing our Twitter account. So don't find us there, but you can find us on Threads and Instagram and Blue Sky. And we love you all. We hope this helped today. We hope if we don't know what's happened this week, we hope that this gives you a little bit of joy as you vibrate. Thank you so much. And
Thanks, Zoraida.
Thank
thanks,
you.
Zoraida.